Hello, welcome back to Let's Talk People Development. My name's Danny.
And I'm Luke.
Great to be back here with you again, as always, mate. Today we are talking about how others may have the answers.
We are.
A topic, a title that we've mulled over quite a lot, I might say, because it wasn't as easy. We were trying to get it into less words, but I think we've got there eventually.
Well, I think it's because we're excited about the story.
Yeah, true.
And what it's delivered for us over the past few weeks, and wanted to give maybe the title the emphasis it deserved.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And actually, I think for me, it was trying to also understand what we've actually learned through the process. Because I think it would be easy to almost go, oh, that worked really well, when we explain it a little later. But that worked really well. But what is it? What is it we've done, and what have we learned from it? And that's what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so.
We are, and we're always challenging ourselves in that people development world to practice what we preach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we try. Like any other person or business, sometimes things will get in the way. We never claim to be the ones that get it right every single time. But it is nice sometimes to deliver against something that we constantly encourage others to do, to see that pay dividend and to feel the impact of that. I think it's nice, right?
Yeah, I think so. Because as well, I think from my perspective, I have the reassurance, because sometimes we can talk about something and you can talk about it so many times and you question yourself, am I convincing myself that this really does work in the real world? And sometimes it can be a long time since we've actually used it for ourselves to prove that. And therefore, that kind of losing sight of something, when you do something and you go, actually, it really does work. I've told lots of people about this, hundreds of people, thousands of people about it, and it actually does work, which is what we're looking for.
And that's it. And it doesn't always.
No.
And I think that's like any industry. Whatever you do, every circumstance is different. Every individual is different. The team that you will be working with, whatever it is, all of that changes. And therefore, it won't always work. But some of the structure, some of the thinking that you place into these things, you do passionately believe they're going to work.
You do. Yeah, definitely.
And I think they do more than they don't.
Yes.
I think that's the point. In fact, where we're sat today, we're off site. We've delivered a session today, and you've talked about the fact that don't try something once, look at it and go, well, that didn't work. And that's it. That's the only attempt. And I guess that's not what we were going to talk about today, but because it's happened today, because we've really been leaning into that with the team that we've been developing around sales, which is don't try something new and immediately feel either uncomfortable or feel a sense of failure.
For sure.
And then that's it. Well, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the point, isn't it? We always say it takes time.
It does take time. And it takes time, and it takes, you also can't just take an idea and expect it to drop in and it to just work perfectly and beautifully and as it should do. I mean, if it does, that's great. But sometimes you have to take it, and to your point, you have to try it and go, well, that wasn't quite what I expected, or didn't quite get to it. Okay, how do I do it again and make sure it wasn't a one-off? Do I do it again, but I try a few things differently? That's the fun of it. Right? That's the fun of trying stuff. And
this is where it goes perhaps against sometimes what we talk about in terms of the planning. This was very reactive. Well, actually, we had our toolkit. We always talk to people in the room about you've got to build up your leadership toolkit, your management toolkit. And these things aren't always there. You can't just have them planned out perfectly. This was reactive. It was an overnight decision, wasn't it, on yours, mine, and Kate's part to go, right, we just need to shift the dials in terms of thinking, and it can't be us. So should we get into that?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about where we got to. So where do we find ourselves other than in a Chinese in London?
That could be any day. Yes, that's true. Yeah, that could be any day with you and me. So I think post-summer, it's fair to say we came out of it. In fact, the first part of the new, relaunch of this episode 1 was all about that, how we were feeling rejuvenated. A lot of the team had taken time off. In fact, I remember specifically saying most, if not all of the team had got some time off.
They had, well, absolutely.
We love that. We love that about our industry. Our industry allows us to do that. And we encourage it. And then we came back, and what is typically, should I say, a September boom didn't happen.
It was an odd year. This has been an odd year.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
very odd.
I mean, we're fortunate to say it wasn't a boom. Everything was solid and consistent, but normally it's just chaos.
Right? Yeah, the madness wasn't there. It was busy, but the over busy, the madness wasn't there yet.
Exactly. And with that, I think what happened was August became also September. August became 8 weeks. And that kind of time off, that what do you call it? That foot off the gas type feeling continued. And whilst you obviously need to, you need to make sure that you've got all of the dials, up and working for everyone to be working at their optimum. Also, there's loads of other things you can always be doing. And when you're busy, I tell you what, that you're wishing you had that time back. And we assessed it, and we just felt like we hadn't really come out of the summer and bounced out of it, because actually what was happening externally wasn't driving that. Well, you don't always need the external. Actually, it takes that internal drive. So, context set. That then continued again. And I think we got to sort of mid-October as we find ourselves sat here now at the beginning of November.
Almost the middle.
Yeah.
Disappearing on you.
Oh, Christ, yeah. And there we go. And we tried new things. We tried great conversations. We'd had I'd done a lot of one-to-ones. We'd given feedback. We'd done coaching. We'd actually been out in that time as a team just to try and, move things forward. Tried all of that sort of democratic, what can we do together? And we're a team. And none of those things didn't work, but they weren't having that impact that we looked for.
It was a step change. If I remember rightly,
Right.
in the conversation, I remember this quite distinctively. We spoke about when we're up against it, we're on the cosh, we are brilliant, right? We really are. We are like, I talk about everybody plays such a critical part, yet we're not necessarily under that same level of pressure from people, because all the stuff we were doing was just working quite well, and there was no last minute changes or adaptations and things. And yet we've still got a lot to do, and because it wasn't necessarily customer driven, it was like, how do we turn up the heat on all of us? It wasn't just about the team, it was everybody, right? It was every one of us.
And I think that's a nice way that you just put it. How do we turn up the heat?
Yes.
Not on people, on ourselves.
On it all, on us all.
Yes. Exactly. How do we create that a shift in thinking, a reconnection to where we were pre-summer that we weren't necessarily seeing, hearing or feeling in the business? It felt a bit flat. And I'll be honest, I was starting to feel a little bit disengaged with it all. And that's the kind of where we were sat. We had the conversation and it was like, right, we've got to do something different. But because maybe my disengagement at the time, I sort of said, I just don't have the answers now. Tried 1, 2, 3, 4, all the things that we just listed.
Yeah.
That's when we said, well, let's put it out there. Right?
Ask the question.
Yeah.
Let's ask the question. Instead of us sitting over a bite to eat and trying to come up with all of the answers, let's ask the question both of ourselves and of everybody else.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you actually think? And see where that goes.
Yeah, I think we did. And I think the way it was positioned was with the pace that we were looking for. So the next day we got on a team call. Our team calls are always great. They are, because we have a really great culture, and I'm so proud of that. But it was very much a case of, right, what is going on? Don't actually have the answers. I expressed how I was feeling. And we all kind of just threw a few things around. I was like, right, this is what we need by the end of the day. And I think that by the end of the day was a really important element to this.
It was the difference that made the difference, I think.
Because if I'd have said, right, let's take a week to reflect on it. I am just doing exactly what we were seeing, which is let's take a week to think about what's going on. So I asked 4 questions. How are you all feeling? What's working well? What could we do better? And what actions are you going to take away? What I encouraged within that, though, to create a little bit of holding the mirror up for everyone, was that when you did the what's working well, what could you do better, I said that 2 out of the 3 have to be a you thing, because sometimes that activity can often draw out a we. So all I end up with, if you would talk about the entirety of the team, is 6. Everybody goes with all these we things, what we could do better, and it's all becomes shared. I wanted that personal accountability versus that team accountability to the ratio of 2 for me, 1 for the team in better, could do better, and what was working well. And I guess, what was the result?
Yeah, well, I think for me, the first thing I'd say from all of that is that traditional review processes often do guide you towards we type thinking. We did this really well. We could do this better. We could improve that. We could make that better. So this kind of concept of having to think, what can I take from this?
Yes.
So what's gone well for me?
Yeah, great.
Whatever that may be. What does it mean to me? But also allow me to think as well about what I think's happening around me, was a good opportunity to get almost 2 parallel views against the same thing. Outcome of that is you then ended up with, and we all did it, so this is really important. So everybody did it. You did it. I did it. Kate did it. The whole team did it. And we all did it straight away. So therefore none of us had, and I think that maybe almost was part of it as well, you almost didn't have too long to think about it.
No.
If you had said let's do it by the end of next week, I think I'd have probably thought about it a lot too much. And then I then got lost in my own thoughts, and I'd have been then going, I've now got like 20 things that I want to write down on a bit of paper because I thought so many. So quite a narrow time window. We all filled it in. And then in turn, what you end up with is this raft of information, but that information was owned by the individual that filled it in.
And that was, I think, for all of us, individually and then collectively, what was so important. What I found really interesting about those 4 layers, from feelings to working well to do better to actions, it's got to be action focused, is for those people that typically spend their time in the logic, and they can easily, well, actually some people, I say they easily, will always focus on the things they're not doing well.
Yes.
Which isn't the conversation you always want to have, because they're always doing great things, but there's always areas that we can look to develop and grow. But those that stay logical will find that part easy. So those that do normally stay in the logical, it was so enlightening to then read how they felt, because they never normally express that. For those that are more emotive, and neither right or wrong, enjoy both.
No, that's right.
I'm an emotive character.
I think both bring value.
Those that were emotive, it was giving them the opportunity to make the emotion logical.
That's right. Think about it practically.
Yeah.
Because I think that's it. And also, and I think this is where my big learn from this has come from, and I've thought about it a lot, is when you give, and let's look at those 2 scenarios. So I'm quite an emotive, feeling-based person. So if it's not going well, I feel frustrated or anxious or frustrated or whatever it may be. I said frustrated, we understand the principle. Therefore, then, I can't sometimes see the wood for the trees, because I can't see the logical steps that's going to get me out of it.
That's me.
Right. So therefore, it's just like you're staring up against a blinking wall, going, well, this is rubbish. Okay, well, what do you need to do? I don't know. I can't, because I can't see beyond it. And then it can become quite consuming, that, for some people, can't it?
It can.
Whereas the opposite, as you describe, and I'm saying it's quite as simple as black and white with people, but the opposite is kind of somebody that goes, who cares how I feel? I'm just here to do a job, right? I just want to get on with it. And therefore, how I feel should have no bearing on this task, right? What do you want me to do? They're great at coming up with a big list, sometimes weighted quite heavily towards what's not working. There's got to be probably a pattern there, I think. Probably for another day. But they're great at coming up with a list of what they need to do, but it becomes quite transactional, and therefore then there's no learning from it. There's no richness in it.
Yeah.
Because they've not kind of connected to, well, actually, why is that? And I think that was something that I remember you talking about is looking at it through different lenses. Would that be the right way to describe it?
Yeah.
You've been able to see it through other people's lenses.
And the lens that they wouldn't typically show.
Right.
So again, the opposite. Logic, I never see the emotion. The emotion, I never see the logic in those different types of characters. And I guess we're quite fortunate to be sat here today filming this, and we've got one of the team here with us, James. James, take your headphones off and head on over for me. So it would be great to hear it from your side, James. Not in terms of what we did, as in me, Danny, Kate, in throwing those questions out there, but what impact it's had on you in the last 3 to 4 weeks since we did it.
Well, for starters, it was really interesting when you first asked us to do it, and I could see everybody's face.
Of dread?
Of dread.
Of dread, yeah.
I was one of them. However, I had a bit to do that day, and I was thinking about it as it was going on, and I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to be totally honest with this. I'm really, really just going to be deadly honest as I put everything in, which transpires, I assume, I haven't read everybody else's, but I'm assuming everybody else was the same. So it was really refreshing getting that out and actually, having that one day, working day, to just think about it.
And lock it in.
And lock it in. Exactly.
And not too much time to think about it, as Danny said, right? Just do it.
It was the biggest point.
Yeah.
To me.
If I remember rightly, it was a Thursday. If that stands out, so therefore it almost would have been fatal, because people would have carried that into the weekend,
Yeah,
and they'd have been pondering it all weekend and overthinking it and overcomplicating it in the mix. So,
but going back to your point, then, my biggest change in the last 3 weeks, we had a conversation about it earlier as well, is just I realised it was me that needs to make the change, not the business. I was sitting there waiting for the business to make a change, and going through and writing these things, I was like, hang on a minute, this is me. This is all down to me.
and I know. I think that is an amazing thing for you to be able to realise for yourself. What we did also have, though, by doing that ratio of 2 for you and 1 for the team, was I was able to then connect the dots, because I did a review with everybody of their reviews. There was so much consistency, not just in the self accountability and ownership, but there's a lot of consistency in how you thought about the changes that you could all make together, which again, since has brought you all quite close, right?
Absolutely massive. I mean, all of us are working so much better together.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Day to day, we feel like a team.
isn't that amazing though? That I'm laughing because it's just like, how many times over my working life have I heard somebody say, I just want my team to work better together, and everybody's trying to make stuff happen, and let's do this. We'll do a team building day. We'll go off and build a raft or whatever. I'm not dismissing that, because actually I've made a living out of that in places in my career, but I've done all those things. But actually, that little bit of personal, but everybody, because it has to be, and we were talking about this earlier on, weren't we, James, about it's almost like the moving cogs of a machine. Everybody's a moving part, so everybody has to do it. You can't do. It was just James that did it, and nobody else did it. It may have had an impact on you, but it wouldn't have had the impact it's had on the collective. In the same way as if I hadn't been a part of it, I wouldn't be able to speak from a position of being able to go, "Wow, I did it, and I actually was writing again. I must feel like I probably should just do this now. I think there was one of the things I actually thought I could probably do that before I've even finished writing the damn review.
And there you go. And James, thank you. I know with that genuinely wasn't planned. You do like getting on camera.
Well, sometimes. Usually we're
not on the
put myself in there.
Normally it's a wave on a live broadcast, but it worked. And hey, look, I'm sure we are quite close to time. I think going back to where we began, sometimes as leaders and managers, we can spend so much time racking our brains trying to come up with the answers. And actually, we're part of that problem.
Yeah.
Because there's so many great people in our teams that probably are asking similar questions or are thinking similar things about not understanding where we are right now, feeling a little bit disconnected. So make it a collective, to your point. Maybe try using what we suggested. Set them up. How are you feeling? What's working well? What could be done better or differently? What actions do you have? Try that ratio piece.
The 2-to-1 ratio, I really like that.
Yeah,
I really do like that.
Self-accountability, peer-to-peer accountability. Make sure you follow it through, which we did in every case, and we were able to have that open conversation and look at it through one another's lenses. And ultimately, for me, it's been a really positive 3 to 4 weeks because we all chose to move forward together. But I'll let you close things out, Danny, but this is all about, as leaders and managers, sometimes stop trying to come up with all of the answers. They might be right there in front of you. You just need to ask those right questions.
I think that for me is a fantastic segue into my reflective views of all of this. And that is, we work with fantastic people that are here because they are talented and capable and brilliant human beings. They're all those things, right? That's why they work in the team. That's why they're there. And they do brilliant jobs day in, day out. And yet when we're up against it as a team, why is it we leave it to 1 or 2 people to try and solve all the problems instead of saying to everybody, actually, what do we do? And we club together in this instance to come up with some parts. But it's the responsibility that we all take through that. And I think that anything you can do as a human being to increase your awareness of responsibility and say, I can play my bit. And in any given situation, everybody can play their part, whether it's at work, in society, communities, the world in which we live in. We all talk about that often. We all can play our part in making a difference. We can. But it starts by creating a process, asking a question, doing something that encourages, in this instance, people to go, I'm going to take some time out, stop, think, reflect, whatever it may be, and find for myself what I think the answers are to what we're trying to achieve. And then when you put all that together, that's got to be the best of the best.
For sure. Love it, as always. Great conversations. I love the fact that it's given us time to reflect. We set out to start this again just to be able to reflect on what we're doing and what's going on in our world. And hopefully for those listening or watching, there's stuff for you to take away. We'll be back with you in a few weeks, but thank you for listening.
Yeah, I really appreciate it as well. And thank you, James, for dropping the headphones and jumping on to the podcast. I sense we may do that again.
Our first guest.
Indeed, we've had our first guest. Our first superstar guest. James Robbins has been on the podcast today.
Be a bit more James.
Thanks very much. See ya.